No reports were ever written about these men. No files carried their names. No medals waited at the end of their path. On paper, they did not exist. But in the jungle, absence itself was a warning. When the forest grew too quiet, when even insects seemed to hesitate, it meant they were close. Wars are usually explained with numbers: sorties flown, rounds expended, casualties counted and categorized. This story does not survive inside statistics. It belongs to those who fought as if survival itself was the mission, and victory merely a consequence. Captain Daniel Reeves arrived believing in order. He believed in systems, in doctrine refined by decades of committees and bloodless conferences. His uniform was pressed sharp enough to cut. His boots were new. His mind was calibrated for structure. Reeves did not consider himself naive. He had studied counterinsurgency. He had read classified after-action reports until their language became familiar, comforting even. Chaos, he believed, could always be reduced, mapped, controlled, corrected. From the helicopter, the war made sense. The jungle below resolved itself into symbols, grid references, shaded sectors, arrows pointing toward intent. Green was not alive. It was an obstacle. Dense, inconvenient, but manageable. That belief lasted until the rotors slowed. The forward area he was dropped into barely qualified as a base. There were no perimeter lights, no command tent humming with radios, just weathered structures sinking into mud, and men who did not bother to look up when he arrived. Reeves was an attachment, an observer. 4 to 5 days embedded with an Allied reconnaissance element operating deep beyond conventional patrol lines. His task was simple: observe, evaluate, recommend improvements. He expected disorganization. He expected improvisation masquerading as skill. He expected to confirm what doctrine already suggested. Instead, he was handed a direction. No briefing, no escort. Just a finger pointing toward the tree line. Inside the jungle waited 5 figures. They did not stand at attention. They did not introduce themselves. They did not even acknowledge his rank. One of them, tall, lean, with a face that looked permanently sunburned into indifference, turned and began walking without a word. Reeves hesitated only a second before following. The first thing he noticed was their equipment. It looked wrong. Weapons stripped down to essentials. Metal dulled. Parts missing where parts should have been. One rifle had its barrel shortened to the point of absurdity. He cataloged the details automatically. Training took over. Questions formed, stacked neatly in his mind. None of them were asked. They moved without commands, no hand signals, no whispered cues. Each man adjusted instinctively to the others, spacing themselves without visible effort. Within minutes, Reeves became aware of something deeply unsettling. He was loud. Every step betrayed him. Fabric rasped, metal shifted. Breath escaped his lungs in sharp, uneven pulls. The jungle seemed to amplify his presence, as if punishing him for existing within it. Ahead of him, the 5 moved like shadows. Their feet barely disturbed the ground. Their bodies flowed around vines and roots as if the terrain had already accepted them. After 15 minutes, sweat soaked his uniform. After 20, his shoulders burned under the weight of his pack. After 30, his confidence began to rot. When his boots slipped and he crashed forward, the sound was explosive. The forest froze. All 5 stopped at the exact same instant. No one helped him up. No one scolded him. They simply turned and looked at him. The look was not anger. It was assessment. In that moment, Reeves understood something that no manual had ever explained. This was not a unit that trained people. It was a unit that filtered them. And he had only just stepped inside the filter. Отлично, иду дальше. Держу тот же тон, усиливаю давление. Уникализация сохраняется. Это part 2. Part 2. The jungle did not ease them in. It never did. Within the first hour, Reeves stopped trying to impose rhythm. The group did not march. They flowed. Pace shifted without warning, slow enough to feel pointless, then suddenly urgent, covering ground in silence before settling again into near stillness. Reeves struggled to understand how they communicated. No words were exchanged. Occasionally one would pause, tilt his head slightly, and the others would adjust, spacing, direction, posture, as if a decision had been spoken aloud. It unsettled him more than gunfire ever had. By mid-morning, his boots began to fail him. Moisture pooled inside them, skin softening with every step. His socks rubbed raw flesh. He clenched his jaw and kept moving, refusing to be the weak link he already suspected himself to be. The tall one, the apparent lead, finally acknowledged him. He stopped without warning, raised a single hand, and waited. The others vanished into the foliage with practiced ease, becoming indistinguishable from the forest itself. Reeves remained standing, confused and exposed. A second passed, then another. The forest changed. It was subtle, almost imagined. Insects quieted. Birds shifted tone. The background noise that had filled the air since dawn thinned, as if the jungle itself were holding its breath. The lead man leaned back toward Reeves, his voice barely more than air. "Listen." Reeves strained, heart pounding. At first he heard nothing but his own pulse. Then, distant, almost imperceptible, metal against metal. A careless sound, human, an enemy patrol. Reeves instinctively reached for his radio. A hand snapped out of nowhere and crushed his wrist. The pressure was precise, controlled. Enough to stop movement, not enough to injure. The lead man shook his head once. No radios, no signals, no mistakes. They waited. The patrol passed within 20 meters. Reeves could smell tobacco, hear quiet laughter, a rifle sling scraping bark. The enemy never saw them. When the forest relaxed again, the five emerged, as if summoned by the sound itself. No celebration, no commentary, just movement. Reeves exhaled shakily. His instincts screamed questions. Why not engage? Why let them pass? The doctrine drilled into him demanded action. The lead man answered without turning. "Contact is noise," he said. "Noise is attention." That was all. They moved again. By afternoon, Reeves's body began to betray him. His shoulders burned, his calves cramped. Sweat ran into his eyes, blinding him. Every sensation sharpened into discomfort. The Australians, if that was even still the correct word, showed no signs of fatigue. They drank sparingly, ate almost nothing. When they stopped, it was not to rest, but to observe. At one halt, Reeves noticed something wrong with their weapons. They were damaged, deliberately. One rifle had its sling cut short. Another had portions of its metal dulled and scratched. One man carried ammunition taped in odd configurations, clearly designed for rapid, silent access. Reeves finally broke. "You've compromised your equipment," he whispered. "Why?" The man nearest him glanced back, expression unreadable. "Factory weapons are built to last," he replied. We don't need them to last. We need them to be quiet. Reeves looked at his own gear. Issued, standardized, optimized for supply chains and maintenance logs. None of it belonged here. That night, dismantled him. They did not set up camp. No perimeter, no fires, no visible rest cycle. They simply slowed, found positions that felt less hostile, and sank into them. Darkness in the jungle was not gradual. It was immediate and absolute. Reeves's senses turned against him. Every sound became a threat. Every movement suggested approach. Sweat cooled on his skin, raising gooseflesh. His breathing felt impossibly loud. Something moved above him. He froze, heart hammering. The shape descended soundlessly from a tree, long, thick, coiled muscle. A snake, large enough to crush bone. Reeves's hand went to his sidearm. Before he could draw, pressure locked his arm in place. The lead man materialized beside him, eyes fixed upward. The snake tasted the air, indifferent to human fear, then vanished into the canopy. The grip did not release immediately. When it did, the lead man leaned close. "Fear travels," he whispered. "Predators hear it." Then he was gone. Reeves lay awake for hours, afraid to move, afraid not to. His training offered nothing. No checklist accounted for this kind of terror. Sometime before dawn, exhaustion claimed him. Day 2 erased what remained of his assumptions. They came across signs of recent contact, broken branches, discarded ration wrappers, boot prints pressed deep into mud. An Allied patrol. Reeves recognized the pattern instantly. Standard spacing, proper formations. Radios likely active. He felt relief, familiarity. They found the bodies an hour later. The patrol had followed doctrine perfectly. They had halted, called for extraction, secured a perimeter. Their radio operator lay where he had fallen, antenna bent upward, still clutched in his hand. Extraction had never come. Reeves stared at the scene, throat tight. The lead man watched him carefully. "Why?" Reeves asked. "They did everything right." The reply was calm. They did everything loud. The jungle had punished precision. That evening, Reeves cut the lining out of his boots. He watched the lead man nod once in approval. No praise, no encouragement, just acceptance. By the third day, Reeves stopped thinking in hours. Time dissolved inside the jungle. Light meant movement. Darkness meant restraint. Everything else was irrelevant. Hunger became a dull background ache. Pain turned informational. A signal, not a complaint. He learned quickly, or not at all. They adjusted his load without asking. Removed items he no longer needed, cut straps shorter, wrapped loose metal. When he reached for his radio again out of habit, it was gone. He did not ask where it went. The lead man finally gave him a name to use. "Call me Hale." Nothing else followed. No rank, no surname, no introductions to the others. Names, Reeves realized, created attachments. Attachments created hesitation. That afternoon, the jungle shifted against them. It began with smell. Not decay. Smoke. Faint. Old. But wrong. Hale stopped so abruptly Reeves nearly collided with him. The others fanned out, vanishing into angles Reeves could no longer track. Hale crouched, pressed 2 fingers into damp soil, then held them to his nose. "Close," he said. Reeves's mouth went dry. They moved lower now, slower. Each step deliberate, testing ground before committing weight. Reeves mimicked them as best he could, suppressing panic as branches brushed his face like reaching hands. The first shot came without warning. Not loud. Not close. A controlled crack, that vanished almost instantly into foliage. One of the men dropped flat. Another shifted position so smoothly Reeves almost missed it. Hale did not look at Reeves. "Down," he said. Reeves obeyed. A second shot. Then silence. The jungle listened. Reeves' heart slammed against his ribs. This was it. The contact doctrine prepared him for. Return fire. Establish dominance. Control the engagement. None of it happened. They waited. Minutes crawled past. Sweat pooled under Reeves's chest. Insects explored exposed skin. His muscles screamed to move. Then Hale moved. 3 steps. Pause. 2 more. A hand signal Reeves barely understood but somehow followed. They closed the distance without sound. The enemy never knew. The firefight, when it happened, lasted less than 10 seconds. 3 shots. 3 bodies. No shouting. No chaos. Just sudden absence. Reeves stared at the men on the ground. Young. Poorly equipped. One still clutched a cigarette. Hale knelt beside one, checked for movement, then stood. "We're done," he said. Reeves waited for something else. A call. A report. Confirmation. Nothing came. They faded back into the jungle, leaving no sign they had ever been there. The shock came later. That night, Reeves vomited quietly into the soil. Not from gore, from realization. He had not given an order. He had not evaluated options. He had not mattered. And yet, he had survived. Hale watched him from a distance. "Don't look for meaning," he said. "Look for patterns." Reeves wiped his mouth, nodded. Something inside him shifted. A part of his identity loosened its grip. The following morning, they tracked something bigger. Footprints overlapped. Heavy equipment. Discipline without subtlety. "A battalion," Hale said. "Moving sloppy." Reeves felt cold. There was no plan offered. No extraction mentioned. No discussion of alternatives. They shadowed the force for hours, always just outside detection. Reeves learned to read the signs now: broken twigs, crushed insects, disturbed birds. He also learned fear could be managed, as long as it stayed quiet. Near dusk, the jungle betrayed them. A boot snapped a branch, not Reeves, one of the others. The sound was small, insignificant. It was enough. Shouts erupted, weapons raised, chaos exploded outward. Hale reacted instantly. "Water," he said. They ran. Not blindly, precisely. Toward ground Hale had already chosen. They plunged into a swamp. Mud swallowed Reeves whole. The smell was overwhelming. Water filled his mouth. Leeches clung to exposed skin. They submerged. Reeves fought panic as boots splashed nearby. Voices passed within meters. Flashlights cut through leaves overhead. He became still. Time stretched unbearably. When they finally rose, the battalion was gone. Hale looked at Reeves, eyes searching. "You learned," he said. It was not praise. It was confirmation. That night, Reeves slept. Not well, but deeply. He dreamed of maps dissolving into green. The next day, Hale handed him a knife. No ceremony. "Your weapon is weight," he said. "This is choice." Reeves took it. For the first time, he did not feel under-equipped. Продолжаю. Part 4. Кульминация и точка невозврата. Тихо, плотно, без пафоса. Part 4. They reached the ravine just before dusk. The ground dropped away sharply. A long wound cut through the jungle floor. Stagnant water pooled at the bottom, black and unmoving, choked with leaves and rot. The air smelled metallic, old, wrong. Hale stopped. Not a gesture. An instinctive freeze that snapped through the group like a current. Reeves felt it before he understood it. Death had already been here. They moved down carefully. No one spoke. Even the insects seemed hesitant. At the bottom, the bodies waited. 6 of them. An Allied patrol, long range, judging by the spacing and equipment. Their perimeter was textbook. Fields of fire established. Fallen logs used as cover. A plan executed exactly as doctrine prescribed, and exactly as doctrine failed. Reeves recognized the gear immediately. Standard issue, familiar, comforting in any environment except this one. The radio lay in the center, still strapped to what remained of the operator. The antenna rose uselessly through vines, bent but unbroken, pointing nowhere. Reeves felt his chest tighten. Hale crouched, touched nothing. "They stayed," he said. Reeves swallowed. "For extraction." Hale nodded once. They waited to be saved. No judgment, no cruelty, just fact. Reeves stepped closer. Brass casings crunched under his boot before he could stop himself. Hale shot him a glance. Not anger, but warning. Noise mattered, even here. Reeves looked at the radio again. He had trusted that weight his entire career. Trusted it more than people. Trusted it more than silence. Now it looked obscene. A machine demanding attention in a world that punished it. They left the dead untouched. The jungle would finish the work. As they climbed out of the ravine, Reeves felt something break loose inside him. Not grief, certainty. He finally understood what had been stripped from him on the first day. Permission. The final test came without warning. Morning light barely filtered through the canopy when Hale halted mid-step. His hand closed into a fist so tight the tendons stood out. Reeves heard it then. A vibration. Deep. Rhythmic. Not patrol-level movement. Mass. Hale didn't count. He didn't need to. "Big," he said. They slid off the trail into a shallow depression, filled with foul water and decomposing leaves. Reeves went last, lowering himself inch by inch, forcing his breathing shallow. They disappeared. The first enemy boots passed within arm's reach. Then more. A column. Dozens became hundreds. Reeves' body screamed to react. His pulse thundered in his ears. His thoughts scattered, begging for action, any action. But Hale was still. The others were still. Reeves locked onto that stillness like a lifeline. Time collapsed. A soldier stopped directly in front of Reeves, close enough that Reeves could see the stitching on his pack. The man shifted his weight, muttered something, spat into the mud. The saliva splashed near Reeves's fingers. Reeves did not move, did not blink. He was no longer an observer, no longer an officer, no longer anything that required acknowledgement. He was terrain. Minutes stretched into agony. When the last footstep finally faded, no one rose. They waited, then waited longer. Only when the jungle resumed breathing did Hale move. Reeves followed, drenched, shaking, alive. He laughed once, a short broken sound, then stopped himself. Hale glanced back. "Never celebrate," he said. "That's how it hears you." They walked out. No extraction, no signal, just feet on ground, mile after mile. At the edge of the operational area, Hale finally stopped. "This is far enough," he said. Reeves looked at him. "For you?" "For us," Hale replied. The others were already melting back into the green. Reeves stood alone with Hale for a moment. "I can't report this," Reeves said. Hale's mouth twitched, almost a smile. "We know. What should I say?" Hale considered him for a long moment. "Say nothing that makes sense," he said. "That's how you'll know it's true." Then he turned and vanished. Back at headquarters, The noise felt unreal. Radios crackled, officers argued, maps glowed with color-coded certainty. Reeves stood in front of it all, silent. His report remained mostly blank. Under remarks, he wrote one sentence. Some wars are won by never being noticed. He closed the folder. For the first time in his career, he had nothing else to add. Идем. Part 5. Final. Закрываем историю тихо, без лишних слов, последствия, эхо, точка. Part 5. Reeves did not sleep the first night back. The bed was too clean, the air too still, the silence too empty. He lay staring at the ceiling, waiting for it to watch him back. It didn't. That bothered him more than the jungle ever had. At headquarters, people spoke quickly, loudly, confidently. They gestured at maps. They pointed at arrows. They argued over percentages and projections. Reeves listened and said nothing. When someone asked him how the observation went, he answered with a single word. Informative. They laughed. He didn't. The official debrief lasted 30 minutes. How many contacts? Unknown. Enemy strength? Irrelevant. Rounds expended? Minimal. Effectiveness? High. They stared at him, pens frozen. That's not a metric, one officer said. Reeves nodded. That's the problem. Later, alone in his office, Reeves opened his locker. His uniform was clean now, pressed again, restored to regulation perfection. His boots shined like mirrors. He hated them. From the bottom of the locker, he pulled out what he'd kept hidden since returning. A knife. Not issued. Not registered. Dull. By design. He turned it in his hand, remembering Hale's words. Your weapon is weight. This is choice. Reeves closed the locker and left the knife inside. Some things didn't belong on display. Weeks passed. The war continued. Body counts rose. Reports stacked higher. More arrows, more colors, more certainty painted onto paper. And yet, operations began to fail in ways Reeves now recognized. Units compromised before contact. Patrols erased mid-transmission. Extraction zones ambushed with uncanny precision. Too loud. Too slow. Too dependent. No one listened when Reeves tried to explain. So he stopped explaining. One evening, Reeves stood alone at the edge of the compound, staring toward the tree line. The jungle sat there, unmoved, unchanged, swallowing sound the way it always had. Someone joined him, a junior officer, fresh, curious. Sir, the officer said, is it true you worked with those recon elements? Reeves didn't answer right away. Is it true, the officer pressed, that they don't use radios? Reeves finally looked at him. Radios tell the world where you are, he said. Silence tells the world nothing. The officer frowned. But how do they survive? Reeves turned back to the jungle. They don't survive, he said. They persist. That night, Reeves burned his notes. Not the official ones. Those were already meaningless. The private ones. The things he couldn't submit without betraying what he'd learned. The flames ate the paper quickly, curling words into ash. When the fire died, nothing remained. Just like the patrol. Years later, after the war ended, Reeves would be asked to lecture. Doctrine, adaptation, lessons learned. He declined every time. Instead, he retired quietly. No book, no interviews, no medals beyond what already sat forgotten in drawers. Sometimes, late at night, he would wake convinced he heard movement outside his window. Branches brushing together. Footsteps that weren't there. And for a brief moment, before reality returned, he felt safe. Because if they were there, it meant he wasn't alone. There is no monument for men like Hale, no plaque, no citation, no official acknowledgement. They exist only as gaps in enemy plans, as failed ambushes, as questions without answers. They leave no footprints. And when the war is over, even the jungle forgets their names. But some observers never do. They spend the rest of their lives quieter than before, listening, careful not to be seen, careful not to be heard. Because once you understand how silence wins, noise becomes unforgivable.